So it's amazing to be here with you, Prince. Prince is a student that just joined the Master in International Development and Public Policy at NOVASB. I'm Vitor. I've been a researcher at NOVAFRICA for the last 3 years. And NOVAFRICA is a knowledge center that is focused on studying development in Africa. And today we'll be here talking about digital education during the pandemic. So as we know, Prince, during the pandemic, schools had to close in order to prevent the transmission of the virus all across the world. And as a consequence of that, we had many young people out of school, so they didn't have the opportunity to go to this environment where they would be learning and creating tools that would provide them like a better future. So if you look at education as a tool to reach better life standards, we had a big concern regarding the school closure. At the same time, we know that in the Africa, we have more and more access to technology over time. So technologies that before was only in the developed world reached like many different places in Africa. So those technologies, they could help people to still have access to education even though the schools were closed. So what do you think was the role that technology played in education in Africa during the pandemic?
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity. So basically, technology has played diverse role when it comes to education in Africa during the pandemic, though we had our own challenges. So a couple of the challenges we had ranges from internet connection down to power in terms of electricity, down to even most students not having access to computers to join like remote learning, for instance. So these are some of the challenges. And then technology generally, even before the pandemic, it wasn't really as accessible as it was or as it should be, not to even talk of during the pandemic period. So during the pandemic, a lot of students had challenges learning. A lot of students had challenges joining classes, hooking up with their friends and stuff like that. So it's really caused a serious setback in terms of learning, and it also caused some kind of challenges that should have been avoided if we have the necessary infrastructures and instruments in place.
So as you were saying, like we know that in some places access to electricity or internet or even computers, it's fair, so many people have access to that. Some other places in Africa, people don't have it. When the pandemic started as a researcher, one thing that concerned me a lot was the fact that as we have this inequality in accessibility, maybe educational inequality would increase as well. Do you think this is like a fair concern?
Yeah, it is a great concern, not just a fair concern. So in Africa, it's large, it's big. So we have different, in terms of development, the development is not evenly spread. So in certain parts of Africa, it's more developed and advanced than the other. For instance, countries like Rwanda and South Africa, they are more developed and advanced technologically than countries like, let's say, Togo. Mm-hmm. So the kind of technology and access to education during the pandemic that students had in countries like the Rwandans, of course, you can't find them or such in Togo, for instance. Mm-hmm. For instance, in Nigeria, we also had our own challenges. So this cuts across all countries in Africa. So the challenges most African countries have is unique to them. And I think it is high time the government of such areas or such countries come up with localized policies and strategies that can resolve and tackle these issues.
Definitely. So now the after pandemic should come with multiple public policy that should not just worry about getting people back to school, but at the same time adjusting the people that couldn't have access to education during the time of pandemic, so they can catch up with the other students that had access to this kind of technology and didn't stop studying even though the schools were closed. I know that you were a student during the pandemic in Nigeria, so experiencing some remote learning. Could you talk a bit about your experience? I see that you're laughing, so probably you have some nice stories to tell us. So what were the main challenges and the solutions that you tried to create in order to keep studying during the pandemic? Okay,
so I had a couple of challenges. So mine was a bit unique because then after I got admission into NOVA, I wrote to the university that I was having issues with my visa So I couldn't get my visa on time. So my visa got delayed for about, I think, 3 months. So then lectures have started already. So of course I needed to hook up and join the lectures online. So, and then the university made a provision for me to join classes on Zoom and on Teams. But then I had a computer that was functional. And whenever I join into the meetings, I have challenges like internet connection. My internet always fluctuates around, let's say, 1 Mbps to about 5 Mbps, then down to kilobyte and stuff like that. So then irrespective of the fact that the internet was unstable, that wasn't a serious concern to me. The main concern was now when I have issues with my electricity. So I will be in lectures because my laptop, the laptop is more like a desktop. So the battery cannot retain power.
Yeah.
So I will be in lectures and all of a sudden the laptop go off. So no electricity, no power for me. So, and then I devised a means whereby I can be joining lectures online, and that was getting like an alternative. So I got a solar panel inverter, and I also got a battery for it. So, and then I realized that even during the lectures, like when the lecturer asks questions in class, I can't answer because the first time I made an attempt to answer, my computer was bringing out white noise. So this was because the solar stuff I was using was more like a substandard type. So these are some of the challenges I had, and these are some of the challenges most African students, or most students in Africa and Nigeria and all over Africa are experiencing. So we always have issues with internet connection, unstable internet connection, down to unstable electricity, down to even not having access to computers. So this has really made education a bit difficult, and this has really made access to resource, online learning, very difficult, and it's something that needs to be resolved.
Definitely, and your example is specifically, I mean, you were in the capital of Nigeria, so in a place where an urban area where we would expect that the infrastructure for you to have remote learning would be much better than in other places. So imagine how other places like further away from the urban centers, how was hard for a student to keep studying during this time, which reinforces the fact that, I mean, the world and of course local governments should be doing something about now that things are getting a bit better regarding the pandemic. Okay, we talk about many negative aspects about, like, I mean, that the pandemic brought to education, but I remember also, like, when I was at home doing my quarantine, that many scholars and many people from the academic world, they were having different events that were publicly available online. So imagine all the economists that I admire and that I respect a lot and that I've been reading their research for a long time, they were there like making lives and like online conferences and seminar in which I could see like different talks and get even closer to the research in a way that I couldn't expect to have before the pandemic, because maybe those talks, they were in a more closed space. This interaction was a bit restricted. So do you think that this kind of solution that, you know, people started to interact more online than they were doing before offline, let's say in those closed meetings, this also helped to disseminate knowledge about Africa and also to bring some interaction of scholars that were in other places with scholars that were in Africa, you know, like this exchange of knowledge between them?
Yeah, I think, they've been, irrespective of the fact that the pandemic came with negative parts, it also has their positive sides. So one of the positive sides, I will use myself as an example. So the pandemic has allowed for digitalization of activities, and that includes like seminars, online seminars, lectures, and all that. So one of the scenarios I experienced was during the pandemic, I had opportunity of attending online classes, lectures, seminars, and it was also an opportunity for me where I saw it as an opportunity to collaborate with researchers from other parts of Europe and also other parts of Africa. And through there, I was able to hone some skills in paper writing, research proposals, and all that related areas. So I was able to publish three academic papers during the pandemic period. So it has positive side. And again, in terms of the government, it's also an opportunity for the government, because the pandemic brought in an opportunity to expose the ills we have in technological development in relation to education. So it's an opportunity for the government of Africa to realize those loopholes in the economy and then fix them. The loopholes are internet connectivity is bad, access to laptops, like getting computers for students, is very horrible. And then the government can also go into partnership with the likes of Google or the likes of HP to make these computers accessible to students. This is actually, it's not a rocket science. There are policies that can be implemented to mitigate this. For instance, one of the ways you can do this, making laptop available to students. You can ask simple questions. Are you a student? Yes, I am a student. Do you have an evidence that you're a student? Yes, I have my student ID card. Then just reach out to the school, confirm if such student is actually a bona fide member of such institution. Then offer them waiver or discount whenever they want to get laptop to make access to education, e-learning very easy for them. So, and there is also, it's very easy. So there is also a theory in economics called the net present value theory. So the net present value theory states that if the net present value or the NPV of a venture or an investment is greater than 0, meaning if it is positive, it is a venture that is worth undertaking. So if the government realizes, of course, it is positive, that getting this in place, getting these technologies in place is positive, then the government should venture into it. So these are some of the positive sides the pandemic has brought that the government can capitalize on to ensure this resource and technology are in place for Africa.
Definitely. So as you were talking, there is still a lot of opportunity for growth in Africa. I mean, if NPV is bigger than 0, not just the government should be interested in doing this kind of investment, but also the private sector. Yes, so, and Africa, it's a huge market. So there are cities and places that there are more people than in Portugal, where we are now. So, I mean, that's also an opportunity, not just for the public sector to make investments and do public policy, but also for the private sector to look at Africa as a place where they can invest and also have like profitability, because there's a huge market there and there are many needs that still have to be satisfied by the private sector, the public sector, whatever it's implementing the public policy. I mean, there is needs that needs to be attended, and technology, it's a way to respond to some of those needs.
Yeah, it is. I totally agree with you. And not just that, because whenever a country wants to develop, the country needs to look out for certain conditions. For instance, in economics, we have what is called first order condition. So in Africa, we need to ensure we've gotten our first order conditions priorities right. So when it comes to implementing any policy, especially in this area, because these policies have long-term implications, not just now, but for future generations. So the first order conditions are to ensure we have all this resource in place. Electricity. For any country to develop, for Africa to develop, we must ensure we get the first order conditions right. So most of what we've been doing in Africa has been copying some policies from Europe or from developed European countries or America. This would not work. This is because Americans and Europe, they already have their first order conditions in place before implementing any policy. So we must get our first order conditions right before we do anything. So, like I said, to ensure education is digitalized, to ensure access to education is 100% available to everybody in Africa, to all the crannies in Africa, to all countries in Africa, we must ensure that we have electricity, we have internet connectivity, and we have access to laptops for students.
So it's like going to the basics. Now, of course, we already have like many technology that could be very useful during these times, like we had the pandemic, so like remote learning could be much more widespread in Africa, not just with the technology that we have, that are super high technology, I don't know, computers, cell phone, access to internet. But firstly, we need to think that, okay, we need to provide like basic things like access to electricity, access to places where they can use this kind of devices. I mean, many things that needs to come first, then the widespread to more advanced technologies.
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, there is a lot of things to happen still, but as we were talking, there is a lot of opportunity of growth in Africa still, and I mean, we hope that we too will be working also together, doing our research, and in the future, hopefully, we will see nice results that the pandemic not just brought some negative aspects, but also incentivized people to look at the problems that Africa faces nowadays, and like that more and more investment will come in that direction to provide basic elements for education to be of better quality, not just in Africa, but in all countries of the world that needs some push to be better. So Prince, it was a big pleasure to talk to you. I hope to have other opportunities to talk to you, and I hope people appreciate the talk and the other talks of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor.